Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, depending on where in the world you are joining today's webinar from. And I'd like to welcome you to this month's Next Level Purchasing Association Members Only webinar entitled Procurement and the As a Service Movement. My name is Charles Dominic. I'm the President, Founder, and Chief Procurement Officer of the Next Level Purchasing Association, and I am delighted that so many of you have joined us today. We have a very, very special event for you today with some guest experts and kind of a different format than you may be used to if you've attended our webinars in the past. Now, in terms of this format, we will be having a kind of like a panel discussion where I will serve as moderator, and we have our two very special guest experts who will answer the questions that I pose to them. Of course, just like we do with every webinar, we will have a question and answer session at the end. Now, one of the most common questions that I don't even want to have as a question, I want to address it right up front so you don't have to ask, is how do you get the slides? Well, if you are a premium member of the Next Level Purchasing Association, or if your company has an all-access corporate subscription, you can get the slides right now by logging into the members area of the Next Level Purchasing Association website and navigating to the library tab. You can find the slides there in PDF format, download them, and if you like, follow along throughout today's webinar. Now, if you don't have a premium membership, or if your company does not have an all-access corporate subscription, I will go over how to get those later in the session if you'd like access to the slides from today's webinar, as well as just about every one of the monthly members-only webinars that we do. So with that housekeeping item out of the way, we can get started. As I mentioned, we have a special group of experts today, and I'd like to introduce them one at a time if I could. Our first guest expert is Christopher Clabby, a principal for PGV Advisors. If you're not familiar with PGV Advisors, let me give you a brief introduction to them, and then I will share some details about Chris as well. PGV professionals focus on identifying and implementing strategies that deliver improved profitability, cash flow, and enterprise value to organizations of all sizes across a broad range of industries. Their cross-functional teams deliver sustainable results through a unique blend of strategic cost reduction, operational improvement, outsourcing, and technology. PG Advisors has offices in New York, Atlanta, South Florida, Houston, and India. Now, let's talk about our guest panelist from PGV, Christopher Clabby. As a principal of PGV, Chris co-leads their national team of professionals as well as directs their Northeast and Florida market segment. Chris has expertise working with business owners and corporate executives in identifying business challenges and leading the development and implementation of cross-functional finance, operational, and tax solutions that deliver measurable value. While most advisors are subject matter experts in narrow areas, Chris demonstrates a broad base of experience across many industries, which has allowed him to deliver a higher level of value to each of his clients. With the ability to lead teams focused on profit improvement, growth, and creation of enterprise value, Chris has helped deliver hundreds of millions of dollars of value to organizations ranging from privately owned businesses to Fortune 25 companies. With nearly 30 years of experience in professional services, the last 15 in various leadership roles, Chris has served as a managing partner and practice leader for international accounting and consulting firms, as well as having previously developed and led a successful financial advisory firm focused on delivering value through finance, operation, and tax improvement. So I hope you join me in welcoming Christopher Clabby as one of our special guest experts today. And let me introduce our second guest expert. Our second guest expert is Jesus Ramos, the CEO of Puridium. Jesus has over 30 years of U.S. and international procurement experience in multiple industries, His ability to anticipate technology directions and market trends has made Puridium a leader in the procure-to-pay solutions market, and the company continues to grow with the development of new innovative products. Mr. Ramos is a graduate of Shippensburg University and has a BS in computer science and an MS in information systems. So please join me in welcoming Jesus as well. All right, now let's talk about procurement and the as-a-service movement. Procurement organizations are facing growing pressure to do more with less, to contribute to the bottom line, not just in the form of savings, but also profit. Procurement solutions must also change to adapt to this new environment and embrace the as-a-service movement. For this webinar, the Next Level Purchasing Association has tapped one of our favorite top procurement technology companies to share its thought leadership on this subject with you, the membership of the Next Level Purchasing Association. That special company is Puridium, a long-time and respected player in the procurement solution area. And Puridium has recognized that organizations must do more than just control spend. They must create a holistic plan for the entire organization that will promote profit, growth, and value in every aspect, and not just procurement. So today we will discuss what this type of program looks like, how procurement as a service works, and why it is not just another outsourcing offering. So, Jesus, I'd like to start with you. You know, we hear a lot about procurement as a service and as a term that's relatively new for most of us, and it represents a change in thinking from past ways that procurement has done. So before we get too deep into that, you know, we're at the precipice of change. How did we get here?
Good morning, all, and thank you for the introduction, Charles. Yes, it has been a long road for procurement to get to this point. I myself have been in the business for 30 years, and I have seen the procurement professional go from a back-end position, from a back-office position, where they found whoever was dumb enough to be at the wrong place at the wrong time to lead the procurement operation, and all the way to today, where we even have a master's program in procurement. It is certifications certainly is quite a requirement today, and we have become an integral part of the corporate structure. So much that there was a move started back in the mid-2000s, 2005 or so, to make procurement a C-level part of the corporation. So a CPO position was being created, and procurement thought that finally we're being invited to the table. So, with that said, many large organizations then later on, as the economy turned down, also realized that well, procurement was not serving the value that they thought was going to serve, and they had to roll back some of those C-level positions, and we find ourselves in today's environment where we are being asked to justify the existence of the procurement position. So I believe we have a question at this time.
Yeah, we can do a poll here, and let me open this up to the group. And just out of curiosity, can we see the poll?
It's visible on the side.
Okay. Yes, I see some answers rolling in, and the question is, which metric are you using to justify the value of procurement? And we have several options for your answers, ranging from quality, total cost savings, procurement ROI, procurement cycle time, cost avoidance, or others. And it looks like right now, the total cost savings is in the lead. And I'll leave the poll open for another few moments. It looks like about half of our respondents have chimed in. And we're still having answers rolling in. But definitely cost savings is in the lead here. Let me see if we can tell how much. All right. Well, I'm going to close the poll in just a moment. It looks like 46%, a whopping majority, are using the total cost savings metric. And it looks like it's going to give participants who are currently working about another 10 seconds or so to submit the responses that they are currently working on, and then we'll get our final numbers.
The second choice, right?
So it looks like the top answer was by far total cost savings. 49% of respondents indicated that they use total cost savings as a metric. And check this out, second place was cost avoidance at 9%, and tied for 3rd% were quality and procurement cycle time. So very distant second and third places compared to the first place.
Excellent. I actually should have put money on this because I was betting my house that total cost savings is the #1 metric that everybody uses in procurement. Our premise today is that using total cost savings as your PKI is wrong. That is the main reason why procurement is not being taken seriously. Instead of focusing in cost savings, what we are attempting to introduce today is the premise that you should be speaking the same language that the C-level executives are speaking. Language of finance, a language of profits. How do you generate profits? If you don't generate profits in the company, then you're a second-level employee or member of the organization. So how do we generate profit? How do we become a strategic partner, part of the organization? That is what we think procurement as a service should be helping you to do, to become a strategic corporate partner.
Very good. So let's go on to the next question I have for you, Jesus, is what is your definition of the procurement as a service market?
Today, companies are faced with managing many disparate services. They're being presented and they're choosing from different services out there. Hence, the moniker of outsourcing is being equated to procurement as a service. Procurement as a service is being defined to procurement professionals as a 4-letter word, EAAS, which, of course, is not what we want it to be. It is being offered as a set of disparate services. For example, we have GPO networks. We have outsourcing of the actual procurement operation. We have companies that will help you do risk management, and so on. So this is a disparate set of services that are being offered as procurement as a service. And of course, if you want to become a strategic partner in the corporation, that is not the most perfect use of those services.
Okay. Chris, you've been on the sidelines a while. Perhaps now is a great time for you to jump in. What are you seeing from organizations with respect to their view of procurement as a strategic partner?
Thanks, Charles. Well, from a general business perspective, companies typically have approached cost reduction from a slash and burn perspective, which, we know is not sustainable. And, this type of cost cutting, eventually creeps its way back into spend, and then executives are surprised that their long-term savings targets aren't met. And as I speak with corporate executives, all of them are feeling pressure from their shareholders, their boards, the general marketplace, and they are searching for a solution that delivers a consistent, measurable, and sustained value. And they're looking at it as, as Jesus had mentioned, thinking in terms of how do corporate executives in finance speak. They're not just looking at it in terms of cost, but they're also thinking of profitability and the enterprise value. So how do these spend reductions help increase the overall value of the organization? And so we're also seeing that it's not limited to traditional for-profit organizations. We meet with our not-for-profit friends, for example, colleges and universities. They all have intense pressure to deliver capital for projects, and they're all struggling to maintain. Anybody who's got a kid in college knows how expensive tuition is. But these organizations are struggling to maintain, to keep tuition competitive. So it is a struggle from a business perspective. So if you look at the current chart, it's a chart I took from an old Aberdeen Group survey of CPOs, and the three things I point out is, first, roughly 50% of CPOs reported that they received directives from top management to improve cost. But the interesting part is 30% felt their role was not seen as strategic. And while this research is a few years old, as I speak to my clients today, the feedback is very consistent from a few years ago. And so, summing this all up, what does it mean? Even if you want it to deliver, procurement may feel somewhat constrained because of its lack of prominence in the organization. And the lack of prominence sometimes impedes the growth because there's an inability to get to data and to get to resources to get it done. And so I think where we're at today, and Jesus alluded to, is the demands that are on top executives today to drive greater value. We've got a real opportunity to raise the bar and the visibility of procurement within an organization. And procurement as a service, as we'll talk about in a little bit, is one of the ways we've been able to help our clients do that. Thanks, Joel.
Very good. Well, Chris, obviously, if 30% of procurement organizations are being viewed as strategic, that's not necessarily, that's not where we want it to be, but at least it gives us hope that there's a template out there for eventually being viewed as strategic. So, Chris, we'll start with you, and then we'll give Jesus the opportunity to chime in as well. For those best-in-class performers, what are they doing today that perhaps other organizations can do tomorrow in order to boost that bar on the chart so that we can get closer to 100% of procurement organizations being viewed as strategic?
Sure. If we just flip to the next slide, there we go, perfect. Great question. Again, this is taken from this is a more recent survey that kind of highlights the difference in performance between best-in-class organizations and what they call others, the rest. And you're right, the best-in-class is a small group. But as you can see, they're driving 9% more in delivered savings to their organizations. And part of the reason is it looks like they have more than 40 percentage points of their company spend under management. So you do the simple math, $100 million in spend delivering an additional 9% of savings, it equates to $9 million, which drops right to the bottom line. And again, as we talked about before, this not only impacts positively profitability, but also cash flow and ultimately the enterprise value of the company. And so as we've kind of spoken to people, we found three what I'll call trends in the best-in-class category. The first is executive level sponsorship. And the executive sponsorship, why is it important? In these organizations, executive management and the board tend to view procurement as having the ability to make a difference to bottom line results. And they look at procurement as a strategic partner, meaning they can distinguish between a low-value purchasing function and a high-performing procurement team. And in these organizations, the chief procurement officer tends to be invited to the management table and reports either directly or one step away to an executive team member. And really the difference that gives this person, they have a voice in management as well as the ear of the executives of the company. And this one factor alone allows procurement department to garner the resources it really needs, whether they're headcount, technology, or business partner, to really affect change throughout the organization. Second area is measurable delivered savings. And by this we mean top management has visibility into what procurement's efforts are, as well as their contributions to the company. And procurement has been empowered. There's also a culture of accountability where there's an expectation for them to drive savings, both short-term as well as long-term. And lastly, and probably the topic that frustrates most, is resource utilization. And just about everybody on this call probably will agree that most organizations will never provide the resources needed to accomplish what is being asked of them. If you think back to one of our first slides, we talked about nearly 50% of top management giving a directive to drive more savings, but I guarantee with that directive, they're not offering up more headcount or more budget. So how do you get it done? And that's kind of the blueprint. The best-in-class, you'll find, they understand that they need to rely on outside help to deliver the results. And if it's done right, you won't be needing to ask for additional budget, but rather showing management the value of the investment and the ROI on that investment. So technology alone won't do it, nor will just outsourcing. And we found that management of the companies we speak to are really receptive to procurement as a service for a few reasons. One, it's a variable cost model, and it provides resources to a company on demand, so there's no need to increase headcount. Many of the resources that can be provided support an existing team and can help accelerate data analysis, collection, or just category expertise. And most importantly, in the scenarios where it's done right, the service delivery, the professional piece of it, where there's, say, category expertise, gets wrapped with robust technology, and the company is left with a really robust solution. So what we tell folks is that if your organization doesn't view you as strategic, don't just accept it, but think about these things. Make a business case for resources, but tie those resources back to achievable results. And we know management makes decisions every day about allocating resources to projects throughout the company, and they allocate to those where they see a healthy return on investment. So there is an opportunity for us as long as Jesus mentioned before, we speak in terms that top management, CFOs, CEOs understand, rather than strictly cost savings.
Very good. Jesus, what would you like to add to that?
Well, essentially, what we're trying to do is define what procurement as a service should be. It's a set of on-demand services that your organization, your procurement department can use to, for example, plug in whatever you have a skills gap, to help you do more with less, to provide the analysis whenever it's needed, to be able to provide, to implement compliance and measurement programs. That is what procurement as a service, that's what the model of procurement as a service should be, and that is what will help you, once again, solve the problem of how to do more with less and the resource utilization problem that Chris was referring to. And everything towards the point of driving profits to the organization.
Very good. Jesus, you mentioned skill gaps, so let me open another poll. And in this poll, we are asking, what are some of the skill gaps in your organization? And several options available for participants to choose from: negotiation skills, supply-based analysis, relationship management, sourcing, and process management. So I'd like to invite all of our attendees to share what their thoughts are on this poll. And so far, we are seeing no runaway leader like we did in the previous question. So this one should be pretty interesting. I want to make sure that we get as many results as we can in the time period we have allowed for this poll, because I think it's going to shape up to be pretty interesting. There may be a leading skill gap, or these may be very, very close. In this particular case, you as an attendee are able to choose more than one answer, so please do choose all that apply to you, and then we'll see how things shake out. Currently we are seeing process management and supply-based analysis being in the lead for some of the skill gaps, but we are seeing question or responses roll in pretty steadily, and the lead could change quickly and unexpectedly, unlike the polling in our home state of Pennsylvania in the presidential primaries last night, where there appeared to be some runaway winners. And again, looking at things as responses are starting to slow down, looks like those two may be the president and vice president of the answers to these questions. I'm going to give you folks another few seconds to chime in with any of your responses. Looks like we do have more than half of the attendees who have responded. I do see that there are some in process still. So I'll give a few more seconds before I hit the close poll button. All right, things have slowed down a bit. The system will give 15 more seconds for remaining submissions. And then I think I was a little slow to the trigger on sharing the poll results, so I'll make sure I do that as soon as this countdown ends in 2, 1, 0. And hopefully all of you can see our poll results now. And it looks like process management was the biggest skill gap among our attendees. I have to scroll on my screen to get a percentage. About a third of the responses named that, and about a quarter of the responses, or a little over a quarter of the responses, mention supply-based analysis. Now, Jesus, you accurately predicted the answer to our first poll question. How do you feel about these results? Is that what you would have expected, or any surprises in there?
Actually, no surprises at all. The different organizations will have different values, different gaps, so that will explain the spread. There's not one single, of course, if there was one single problem or gap, most people will tend to rely on education or organizations such as yourself to plug that in. However, the different demands from the slide that we saw before, the procurement goals that are being placed in today's procurement organizations require that you use different hats all of the time. And that becomes a problem because obviously you will not be able to be all persons to everybody. So you have to choose what to specialize in. And there will be some gaps in the organization that will occur naturally.
Okay, very good.
Here comes the on-demand services to help you out.
Okay, let's move on to our next question. And Jesus, let's stick with you, and then we'll give Chris the opportunity to add Any additional thoughts? What are some of the areas where you see organizations benefiting from having outside support in identifying and implementing a cost reduction strategy?
And this is the perfect time, once again. We're talking about on-demand services, services that you can use to fill in those skill gaps. Procurement as a service should not be trying to take over your job, but rather help you perform and deliver the cost savings, which equate into profits, and the invitation into the C-level office. There are three big areas of immediate use that everybody can use, for example. There's turnover, constant turnover, and training new people to do procurement always becomes an issue because you don't have the time to dedicate to training new people. So if you had a trusted partner who could provide those on-demand services, if you have a trusted partner who could help you with sourcing events, not everybody uses sourcing event all of the time, so they become a one-time topic. So on-demand sourcing events, for example. And analysis. Not everybody has the luxury of investing on an MBA type of person to bring into the team or the procurement team to do the analysis 24 hours a day. So what we can do as part of the Procurement as a Service program is to provide on-demand analysis. So those are three immediate areas where we can impact and help you do more with less.
Very good. Chris, how about your thoughts on the matter?
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. I mean, I think as Jesus pointed out, you know, every organization has got gaps in resources, and you know, when we meet with our clients, we typically you know, think of things in really in terms of 4 buckets: data analysis, category expertise, market research, and compliance. And what we do is we try to help them walk through a gap assessment and think about, you know, what's their current state? What does their organization look like? You know, where do they want to be in the future? What kind of profitability do they want to drive for the organization over the next 12 to 24 months? And what can they deliver with the existing resources, including people as well as technology? And that kind of, you know, that equation flushes out the additional resources that are needed to drive additional value. And you know, when you talked about the BestinClass earlier, we said, you know, they had a keen way of using outside resources to help them deliver the value. That's what we tried to help our clients think through. So we've seen it in a couple of areas. The first one, and it did surprise me a little bit in the polling because we find so many companies struggle with data. Data. It's the key place to start. Many companies invest in expensive ERP systems, but still the procurement folks can't get to the data that they need to really drive the savings that the organization wants from them. Best way to kind of demonstrate this is a recent client story. We were working with this global organization, very decentralized in 30-plus countries. They had dozens of different ERP systems, and management, the CEO, was seeking to drive savings through indirect expense categories. But it was impossible for procurement to get to the data and even start a sourcing activity. So how we helped, we put a team of professionals and technology around the project over a 2-month period. And for the company, we were able to normalize their data across the many ERP systems. So they had different GL coding, different descriptions, different ways of storing detailed spend information. And at the end, we were able to categorize the spend by 12 different major categories, as well as minor indirect categories under each one. So during month 3, that company, we were able to provide the internal procurement team with the information that they needed so that the category managers could begin driving savings in a lot of these categories. And within 6 months, the company was starting to enjoy savings in a lot of these categories. Now, it was a good short-term solution to get to data. Now the next phase is, they need a longer-term solution so they're not in that situation again. But it was a good example of how they didn't rely on internal resources to get it done, because all these people had a full-time job as it was, and they were able to tie the value of making the investment and going outside the organization to help pull the data together so that they could drive the savings. The other area we're seeing is companies, especially in indirect area, outsourcing specific categories of spend to a business partner, someone with specific subject matter expertise. 2 areas that we're seeing a lot of that, a lot of people are reaching out, is telecom, where with the right partner, there's 30% plus savings in the category, as well as a lot of other benefits, as well as logistics. We've worked on the logistics side. We've worked with clients to deliver anywhere from 12 to 24% reduction in their overall spend and improve their processes at the same time. So that's part of the equation. It's not just savings, but it's operationally improving processes. And so since we're not a freight broker, we were able to bring the right players to the table for this client. They got a combination of brokerage, dedicated trucks, freight audit and payment solution, as well as implementing technology for them to manage the process. And they got a 14% reduction in spend on top of it. And they acknowledge that that's not something that they would have been able to do on their own, and they wouldn't have thought about going to multiple providers to develop a solution for them. So that's kind of some of the areas that we're seeing organizations reach out to us and ask for help to supplement the skill set that they have internally.
Okay. Now, I had my next question queued up, and you may have answered this already, or you may have some additional examples. I'll just ask the question and give you the opportunity. Can you share some examples of how the procurement as a service model has had a significant impact on an organization's operational process and to their bottom line? So anything to add to that, Chris?
If we flip to the next slide, the other one, I just kind of spoke about individual areas, but this particular case study is an actual company that I would say utilized procurement as a service in the right way. So it's a $3 billion public company. Again, what we have here is a company that was very decentralized. Again, they very much wanted to build a centralized procurement organization, but they didn't want to wait to enjoy savings. And so what did we do? Well, we did that gap analysis for the company. We helped them walk through what their current skill set was and where they needed to plug some of those holes in their team. But we started by helping them getting better visibility into their data. And again, same exercise, help them normalize the data over multiple ERP systems, so we had a good starting point. But then we said, okay, the company was anxious, and management was anxious to start enjoying some savings. We didn't want to wait for a procurement team to be built. And so we worked with the company management and said, what are some categories that can be outsourced to someone with specific expertise or industry experience, and we can accelerate savings? So that's another area where procurement as a service comes in. It's also the ability to add to the existing team and accelerate savings that would otherwise wait because people didn't have the time to get to it. So these are 4 categories: equipment rental, consumables, the fuel, oil, and gas, and the transportation and freight, that we took on one at a time from the company as they were building out their procurement team and helped drive some of the savings to the organization. And in each of these, we managed the process from beginning to end. We did the data analysis. We performed the market research for alternative vendors. We developed RFPs and managed the process. And the client was thrilled because their time was limited to status meetings with us and to decision meetings where we brought them options or decision points where they had to weigh in on a direction to go. So they were able to focus on categories. So here's 4 categories, and if they were focusing on 4, we got 8 categories done and drove similar savings where they only had the capacity to get 4 done at a time. Yeah. And at the end of the day, you can see some of the additional benefits, but at the end of the day, we left them with tools that they had visibility into spend. They had visibility, real-time visibility into spend, price variances, and they were left with best-in-class processes to manage their new procurement organization. Now, they still rely on us. Now, they built out this organization, but they still rely on us in certain areas where they decided not to build internal skill set, but leave it on an outsourced basis with another provider who can help them bring a solution in those particular spend categories.
Okay, very good. We have one more poll that we're going to invite everyone to participate in. I've opened it now, and this poll simply asks, what is your organization's current position with respect to procurement as a service? You either currently utilize it as part of your procurement strategy, you're in the process of evaluating it, or you have not thought much about it. So a few minutes for you guys to chime in there. I think we're all interested to see where everyone is on this journey. Again, procurement as a service is a relatively new term, although in some ways its basic concepts have been utilized for many, many years. So let's see where the results shake out. And this one looks like it is going to be a close race as well. So just over a minute into the poll. And yeah, the answer C, have not thought much about it, has been holding a slim lead since we opened the poll, but the other two options are not far behind. This will be pretty interesting, and responses are coming in quickly, so we will give this time to shake itself out and see where our audience is with procurement as a service. And actually, second place is currently used as part of your procurement strategy. So it's kind of interesting that it's almost like a divided group with a lot of people who haven't thought much about it, a lot of people where it's a part of the core procurement strategy, and the lowest number of people somewhere in the middle in the process of evaluating. Usually when we see these maturity curves, you kind of expect to see a slope rather than a U-shape. Either a slope going from people haven't thought much about it and the fewest amount of people have it as part of their procurement strategy, or the opposite way around, where if it is an idea that is caught up, the fewest amount of people will have not thought much about it, and that will slope upward to the currently used as part of our procurement process. But this is a little bit different. So it looks like most of you have gotten your responses in. Still a few people working. I'm going to close the poll now. That will allow about 15 seconds for those of you who are working on your responses to finish up. And we will see where this shakes out. And we have 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And the poll is now closed. And let's take a look at the results. Hopefully you were able to see this on your screen, but again, the greatest amount are folks who have not thought much about procurement as a service, whereas second place are the folks that currently use procurement as a service as part of your procurement strategy, with the fewest people in the middle. So that's interesting. Any surprises there, Jesus or Chris?
Not much,
from my
really.
perspective,
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. So we thought about this as to what actually should be the role of procurement in today's, the procurement as a service in today's organization. So back to the original problem. What is procurement's role in the organization? To become a strategic partner, to drive savings on an everyday basis? But I don't know that that is possible to be able to generate savings every single day, which is why we find ourselves, why the procurement organization finds itself in the current dilemma. Are you contributing to profits, or are you concentrating in delivering savings every day? Savings usually don't last very long. So you have to implement some kind of program that will help you look for the next savings element, or something that helps you put into place, like, for example, process automation, implement a contract compliance programs that will help you drive those savings on a constant basis, and therefore be able to generate the profits that everybody's looking for.
And I would add to that, Charles, it's like, we're finding that, I guess I'm not really surprised, and again, go back to an earlier slide where we're talking about, where companies found themselves in the curve, as maturity curve. Every organization is at a different point. Some are further along and have addressed it, and others are in the process of doing it. So fortunately, we've got some that are further along in the maturity curve, and we can learn from them. So we can help the 2/3 that are either evaluating it or will at some point in the future, as they move along the maturity curve for their procurement organization.
Mm-hmm. Very good. All right. Well, I want to make sure that we have enough time for questions from the audience. That tends to be a popular segment of our webinars. So very quickly, I'd like to ask any final benefits of your view of procurement as a service that perhaps we haven't talked about yet, or that you'd like to summarize more succinctly. So Jesus, let's start with you, and then when you're done, you can turn it over to Chris, and then I will lead the question and answer session from the audience.
Certainly. Procurement as a service is a basic definition, on-demand services. But those on-demand services should be used to implement long-lasting benefits and or programs into place. Programs that will help you carry on those savings for a long period of time and not just for that immediate period. Procurement as a service, by having a trusted partner provide you with on-demand services, you can certainly and effectively use this program that we're talking about. Chris?
Thanks, Jesus. From my perspective, procurement as a service is the delivery of a service utilizing a combination of people, process, and technology. And a lot of organizations probably look at these needs separately, where procurement as a service, we kind of wrap it all together and see how we can solve a problem or exploit an opportunity by using each of these components. And the key benefits are accelerating savings, and if designed right, it becomes not a cost to an organization, but an opportunity to drive more profitability, to the bottom line.
Very good. All right. Now we're going to open things up to questions from our audience. I'd like for all of you in the audience to turn your attention to the corner of your WebEx console. There you will see a Q&A section, and in that Q&A section, a space for you to type your questions. You can send your questions, click the send button to send your questions to me. I will read those aloud, and Chris, Jesus, or maybe even myself will chime in with an answer to your question. So now's the time to ask your questions, and as you do, I am going to talk about something that I mentioned earlier in the presentation, and that is how you can get the slides to today's webinar. So let me share my screen here, and there we go. Hopefully you see my my screen now. And a common question is, how can you get the slides from today's webinar? One of two ways, and again, we're just covering this as your questions roll in, which we will address in just a moment. If you'd like the slides from today's webinar, if you have an all-access corporate subscription or a premium membership to the NLPA, the slides are available for you right now. I apologize, this slide did not render all that great in this particular slideshow mode, but the center column there is premium membership, and the right column there is an all-access corporate subscription. If you have a premium membership, you will get slides from today's webinar, access to on-demand replay of today's webinar, as well as the slides and on-demand replays of most of the NLPA members-only webinars that we've done over the past 4 years or so. You'll also get a variety of templates, such as an RFP template, cost savings recording template, supplier scorecard template, etc. You'll get transcriptions from interviews that we've done with procurement experts, and you will have access to all 26 of our online express courses. Each one of those express courses is slightly under 1 hour in duration. The cost of a premium membership starts at just $15.99 per month. For annual memberships, it's $99.99 per year right now. Fantastic value. There may be some changes to the premium membership program in the coming weeks. I'm not ready to disclose what those are, but let me just say this is a heck of a deal. You may want to jump on it sooner rather than later. Another way of getting access to the slides, the replays, etc., from all of our, or most of our past members-only webinars is an all-access corporate subscription. Just like the premium membership, you would get access to the slides and on-demand replays. You'd get access to those templates. You'll get access to the transcriptions from interviews with procurement experts. You'll get access to all 26 of our online express courses, and here's where the tremendous amount of value kicks in. You'll get access to all 16 of our full-length online courses, including certification. Each one of those full-length online courses is approximately 8 hours in duration, and it includes access for your entire department. So if you're interested in a quote on that, please call us at the number that you see on your screen. We'll be happy to quote you for that. Alrighty. So let me see what questions have rolled in. And it looks like we do have a few questions. And let me scroll up to the first one. This question comes from Daniel Martin, and Daniel asks, as we move into services, how do you retain savings? My experience has been savings being used to start other projects. So, Jesus or Chris, how would you like to answer Daniel's question?
I think we went into that question a little bit earlier. You have to implement a program that will help you sustain those savings. What does that mean? Two things: implementing technology and process automation. If you automate processes, they will deliver savings. If you implement technology, it will help you sustain those savings on a long-term basis. Chris?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, what you're talking about there is a common issue that we find, is that people get savings, but their issue is, how do I keep the savings? And that's why, I mentioned that, procurement as a service is a combination of people, process, and technology. Just negotiating better rates with a vendor is not enough, because, again, you need some sort of tool to maintain compliance with a new set of agreements, and sometimes you need to think about change management and the processes around procuring that particular goods and services so that the savings doesn't come in the front door and then slide out the back door. So it is not, you can't look at it in a bubble. You do need to look at the process and the technology as well so that you can manage the savings.
Very good. Our next question comes from Alfredo Figuera, and Alfredo asks, till what part of the procurement process does the PAAS normally go? Till recommendation, from recommendation to award, until implementing the contract with the commercial conditions, till following the use of the contract and compliance, etc. So, you know, at what point does procurement as a service go back to business as usual? You know, where is that handshake point where it diverts back to the way things have traditionally been done?
I think
go ahead, Jesus.
I think we're talking about a dynamic program, something that doesn't have, you don't have to use yes at the beginning, the middle, or the end. It is a program that will help you bring in the right resource on an on-demand basis at the right time, whether it is to analyze, to research, to implement, or to finally deliver. Chris?
Yeah, and I would add to that, you know, I know that nobody likes this answer, but it depends. It depends on the organization and what their needs are and what their skill set is. Some organizations use it as a way of life, right? So business as usual is having a business partner who maintains oversight of certain areas of the department. Other times it's on a short-term fix. And sometimes you end up in a relationship where you think it's going to be one and it morphs to the other. So I think it really depends on the culture of the company, what they're looking for. The key is it is really customizable, and whatever you do and whoever you work with, make sure that they're judged and graded on the value they deliver. So this is not intended to be a time and material where you can't tie the cost to the returns for that investment. So you know, whomever you're working with, if you do extend them beyond a very specific project, you should be able to tie the cost of having them help you with an ROI to make sure it makes sense.
Excellent answer. Okay, we're coming up on 12:30 Eastern U.S. time, so we have time for just one more question. And this final question comes from William J. Franz, SPSM. And William asks, if I wanted to present the idea of procurement as a service to my top management, what would be the steps that I would follow to start the ball rolling? I am also the planner, so I do not have a lot of time to spare.
That is perfect. You have two phone numbers and 2 email addresses as part of the presentation. Please use them.
Yeah, be happy to do that. I mean, that's one of the things that we do for our prospective clients, as we mentioned back earlier, is help them think through it. What we're trying to get to is a point where we can help them put more solid facts to a business case of why bringing in a business partner to help in this area is the right solution. And it goes back to a lot of what we were talking about. There is some work that needs to be done up front. We try to take that heavy lifting off of our clients' shoulders and help them come up with the presentation to management that management will look at and say, this makes sense to dedicate resources to. But be happy to talk to anybody on this webinar today that wants to discuss the specifics in more detail.
Very good. Well, that is all the time we have for today's webinar. Chris and Jesus, thank you guys so much for sharing your expertise with the members of the Next Level Purchasing Association today.
Quite welcome.
Thank you very much for having us.
Our pleasure, and for all of you attending today, I'd like to thank you for spending this hour with us. I hope you got some educational value out of today's session, and we will be having another one of our monthly Next Level Purchasing Association members-only webinars in May. So watch for Leading Edge Supply Management Magazine to arrive in your email inboxes within the next week, week and a half, and that will have information about the topic, day, time, and registration information. And again, the contact information from our panelists today are on your screen. So if you have any specific questions, want to pick their brains a bit, please feel free to reach out to them directly. So on behalf of the Next Level Purchasing Association and today's sponsor, Puridium, I'd like to thank you for attending today's session and look forward to seeing you all on a future Next Level Purchasing Association monthly webinar. Good day, everyone.